First off, thanks for coming, Jay.
Thank you for having me.
It's so funny, these podcasts, because you're on the other end. Is this your first time on that end?
Excuse me? Was it not like that? No. Podcasting wise, yes, but I've been interviewed on radio shows before and stuff like that. So no, it's not my first time on the other side of the microphone, let's say.
But at like this type of length, like obviously like a radio show is going to be what, like 20, 30 minutes. But if we're going for 3 hours today.
If you want to go 3 hours, mate, I can handle it.
So I initially started this podcast listening to your podcast and decided it was during COVID. I was like, you know what?
What you said was, yours is shit, Jay, so I can do better. That's what you thought.
I'm like, that's a great idea because there's so many interesting people on the island of Phuket. And I've had this conversation multiple times with people. If you go back to your hometown or where I'm from, a small town in Canada, how many interesting people are in that town? But in Phuket, they're a dime a dozen.
No, it's true. And I'll tell you what the other thing that we found when we do our podcast, Jay the Shark and Friends and Russell podcast, that you think you know people here, but you don't. Once you sit down with them, talk to them, for an hour and a half, you find out so much more about them that you never knew. Because you only know people from, hanging out with them, seeing them in the same situations in Phuket, going to the same networking events, whatever. You sit down with them, all of a sudden find out, wow, you came from where? And you did what? How did you what did you do? And that's what we found really interesting when we started ours.
Why did you guys start it up? Like, where did this, how was it born, essentially?
Okay, so pre-COVID, so we've been going for 3 years. We're coming up to 150 episodes, but we've missed a bit of time during Christmas, New Year, bits and pieces. But myself and Russell, who's the co-host on my show, we were on radio together years ago back in Phuket. So we started off on 91.5 back in the day. God, long time ago. And we both really love radio. We both like entertainment. We both do MCing, bits and pieces, stuff like that. And it just got to the point, I just got divorced and I was a little bit down, a little bit depressed, a little bit kind of wanting to find something creative to become happy again. And I always loved radio, wanted to get back into radio, but radio here in Phuket, you're very limited to what you can and can't do. And you're kind of told, right, you must play this music, you must say this thing, you got to do the traffic, you got to do the weather. And look, that's cool, and I get it, but that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to be creative, we wanted to swear, we wanted to do our own thing, we wanted to have no one telling us what we can and can't do. So we just came up with the idea of let's just go for it, let's just try it. We recorded, we must have recorded about 6 episodes, just randomly, just trying to come up with a different idea.
Just
of what
you
to do.
guys.
Just us, just me and Russ, just shooting the breeze, chewing the fat, whatever you want to say. And then we just kind of went, at one point I said, do you know what? Fuck it. Let's just do it. Let's just record it and get it out there and see what happens. And that was the first episode, and then it just grew from there. The first guest wasn't until the 3rd episode, and then that erupted into even more complications, as you'll understand, is trying to get guests is the hardest thing. And getting guests lined up at the right time, because Russell and I both have got different jobs. So to try to get everyone all together at the same time on the same day is a nightmare. And that's been the hardest thing about the podcast.
How did you start deciding like the theme of the podcast? Because it's very similar to this one as well. We're just bringing people on the island that have these interesting stories.
It just evolved. The idea was, I think, like I said, we did about 6 before, just chatting, just me and Russ, just having a little giggle and just at one point we was going to pick up 3 different topics and was just going to talk about those topics and see what happens. But then we just went into people's journeys, and as we were saying, finding out about people, how they got here. Why did they come here? There's different people. Years ago, people used to come here, I was on holiday and I stayed. That was everyone's old chestnut. But that's changed. People are here for different reasons. Some people was on a boat and they just ended up here. Some people were, wanted to come here. Some people were on holiday and stayed. Different people got different stories. So we wanted to document the stories of why people came to Phuket and then what they do here and learn more about them. And also the other thing, we wanted to meet, well, I say we, it was more so for me, I'm, as a single dad, so my 2 kids live with me, I wasn't going out very much, and I knew a lot of people. I've lived on the island for a long time, so I know a lot of people, but I wasn't meeting new people. So the starting the podcast and getting guests in was another way to meet new people, and people that we might not know that well, or we might have only seen around and bits and pieces. And yeah, we got them in and chatted to them, and here we are, 150 episodes later, and we're still at it.
If you enjoyed this content, we're doing 5 clips like this a week. If you want to watch the full podcast, click here.